Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Homerik. Today, I will be joined by a good friend of mine by the name of David Millgate. Now, David is an artist who has created many paintings and also graphic novels. He's a writer, and he also just contributes as well to Homerik's own stories. In the middle of our collaboration for the Circle of Dead Children, I decided it would be a good idea to bring on David Millgate to discuss a few things about the process of working on Homerik. So without further ado, David, welcome.
Hello, Ken. How's it going?
Doing great.
Nice to be.
So, how's everything going on in the UK for you at this time? Are you able to get more creative work done while you are at home?
Yeah, I guess it's been a strange year for everybody, and that goes for everyone around the world, I guess. Certainly here in the UK, it's just been unprecedented.
Right.
So it's been an odd year. For me personally, it's been interesting because obviously when you're confined to your house or your home for longer periods of time, you've got to find something to do to, keep yourself occupied.
Right.
And obviously if you're an artist like myself, and you're a creative person, the best way that you can stay sane through all this madness that's been going on with COVID and everything is to keep busy working. And I've found that's what I've used to help me get through it. There's been some tough times and some better times. Overall, I think keeping really proactive on the work side of things has really helped me get through it. So I've had a lot more time to be at my desk, I guess, and at my computer doing the work. And I just focused on that. And that, if I'm focused and I'm thinking about work and what I'm working on and various different projects, that's when I'm happiest, when I'm busy. Mm-hmm. And this project certainly keeps me busy. So yeah, it's definitely been a strange year, but I've tried to use the time productively, and keeping creative and keeping busy working is how I do that.
Right. Well, we've certainly shared that same experience, and working at home has sort of brought to light that we can spend a little bit more time on this craft and excel at it, for that matter. Over the course of this year alone, I think we've seen progress and growth, unlike probably other years of working on Homerik, especially. So let's start there with Homerik. Yeah. Let's talk about a little bit how did it get started between you and me? Because I know I reached out to you first, right? So
yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, and I couldn't remember the first time that I heard about this project or your name mentioned or where that happened. I think it might have been via a friend and via Twitter.
It was definitely via Twitter. Yeah,
sure. I think it was. Maybe somebody saw a comment that you'd made and thought of me. I think it might have been that way.
Well, I think there was a mutual friend between us.
Yes.
And I believe his name was Pablo, and he introduced you to me, and I checked out your work, and I loved everything that you did, and said, hey, maybe we can do something here. And turns out we were on the same wavelength, brother. So that was a moment to come, and so excited about it. But out of all of this, we've been sort of developing this working relationship since 2018, I believe.
Yeah.
And
I was looking at the paintings I've been doing, and I think the earliest one is dated 2018. So
that's right.
That sounds right to me.
Right. So for those of you watching, right, this project has been in the works for quite a long time. I always tell everybody that the first idea that came to the Circle of Dead Children came in about 5 years ago. So we've had quite a bit of a run working on this album, and that's why, you know, I always kind of mark it by the first like idea that was written for it. So it was quite a while ago. What is that, 2015, right? So that is, yeah, March 2015, I believe, is the exact month. So been on this journey for a little while, and certainly David has joined in the middle of all of that, and we've had this thing going on ever since. So yeah, and you know,
for you, it's definitely been a wild ride. It's quite some time.
For sure. But let's talk about your artistic process when it comes to creating something for Homerik, because one of the things that I got sort of a question from one of our fans was, how do you interpret music and art in one, right? How do you create that visual from the music? And for me, it's like, how do I create the music from a visual? So do you want to kind of tackle that?
Yeah, well, for me personally, the way I work and the way I've always worked, there's always been like this synergy between music and the artwork that I do. Mm-hmm. One of the things, it's just a simple thing, but is when I work, I'm always listening to music. It's always been that way. So the two things, even if it's just been on a subconscious level, right, the two things have always been kind of connected. When I sit there painting, drawing, designing, drawing comic books, graphic novels, whatever it is, I always have the radio on and the rock music blasting out, or I'm listening to, you know, my iTunes library in the background. And even if I'm maybe sort of lost in my own thoughts with the work, it's just there, always in the background, the music. Right. So it's always been inspirational to me. And obviously, because I've played in bands myself, and I've always been involved in the music scene because I play drums, and I play drums in a band still at the moment. The two things have always gone in hand. The art and the music have always gone together. So the two feed into each other in a really positive way. And like I say, sometimes it's maybe on a subconscious level when I'm working, I just have the music always there in the background. Kind of keeps me company and helps me get in what I call the zone and just kind of get focused on what I'm doing. So that has always just been a natural way for me to work when I'm doing the artwork and the creating. It's just, there's always music in my head of one kind or another. And I have really wide-ranging tastes in terms of the kind of music I like as well. So I listen to a lot of diverse kind of music. When I was younger, I used to predominantly just listen to punk records. I mean, we're talking about when I was 11, 12, 13 kind of age. I would just sit there on the floor drawing, you know, and I had the little record player next to me playing little 7-inch singles, these punk rock records that I used to love and still love, actually. I can still listen to them now. But yeah, obviously, as you grow, you take on board other genres of music, and your influences may be coming from different areas. You like to find new stuff. And certainly the first time I heard any of Homerik's music, I was like, whoa, this is different. So I guess I'm of a certain age. We won't go into exactly how old I am, but I've been around a while. So I thought I'd heard every kind of metal that there was to hear. Obviously, back in the day, back in the 70s, a lot of those groups just called it heavy rock. They wouldn't even call it heavy metal. But then as time's gone by, all these subgenres have been created. You have the death metal genre, the black metal genre, you have the power metal. Right. All these things, you know, all these different genres of metal. It's really diversified. And I've listened to most of it and thought I'd kind of heard it all, really, and was wondering, you know, what can be done in heavy metal that's not really been done before? Because we've had symphonic metal, which has been taken to, you know, fantastic heights with bands like Nightwish, who I adore. Mm-hmm. I think they're amazing. But you think, wow, has it all been done? Is there anywhere else that metal can go? And then Homerik came along, and I was like, whoosh. What's this? This is really like, I've not heard this before.
Thank you.
And that's genuinely from the heart. And this is really, before I actually did any work for you, I think I was just aware that, you know, we'd been introduced by our good friend Pablo, and I just listened to some of the tracks you'd released, I guess off the first album that were already online to watch the videos and everything. So I was kind of aware of it from there. But I really thought, yeah, this is something different, something I've not heard before. You can't say that very often.
Well, that's really, really kind of you. And I wanted to kind of touch a little bit on that, because when it comes to your artwork is very, very, very storytelling. You know, and as so maybe if you want to talk a little bit about how the music of Homerik, right, sort of came into light with your artwork. And as you do that, I'm going to try and see if I can pull up some of your artwork for the audience to see.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm kind of spoiled because you send me these story scripts that you've written, and I sit there and read it. And I usually start by saying to myself, oh, this is going to take a while to read. I'll maybe just skim through it the first time. But I usually, by the end of the first page, I'm hooked, and I'm reading the entire thing from front to back because I'm so engrossed and drawn into the story, which is terrific. I'm really spoiled in that I have to kind of almost like think, well, what am I going to leave out here? All this is such great material. I have to kind of cherry pick the characters, the creatures, the moments, the scenarios that you've described, and pick the ones that I really get excited about drawing, designing, and painting. Because these paintings have got kind of a montage style in that, like I say, I cherry pick the moments and the characters and the imagery that strikes me from reading the script as what's going to make an exciting image with all these separate elements. How can I create a composition that's dynamic, exciting, and kind of has almost like trying to tell a little story within one picture. One picture.
Right.
And then if I can create a little bit of mystery with the drawings and the paintings, that people will be sort of drawn into it and want to know more. That's the kind of goal that I set myself.
Right. I couldn't have said it any better myself. And what we're seeing on the screen here is actually the first painting that you've done for us. This is Godless and Limbo, right? So this was basically that first part of the story, that introduction, when, you know, you guys haven't read it yet, but it's I'll give a little bit of a teaser here. So essentially, Morgana is the girl in the Song of the Night Part 1, the little girl in the music video. If you watch the video, you'll know what I'm talking about. And she grows up, and essentially we start off in a setting of, her turbulent home, and this is sort of the grounds for her to be sort of influenced and seduced by the devil. And she takes on the deal with the devil, and it becomes an entire epic beyond that. So in Godless, in this image, right, the premise of me asking you of what this should have been about was, well, okay, I want to show the relation between Morgana and the devil, but I also wanted to show Dante, who is the main protagonist of the story. Morgana is a very significant part of this story, but she's not the main person, although she does influence heavily on what happens. So after we see that setting of Morgana, we sort of move to Dante and what happens in his side of the story, which isn't crazily illustrated here. There's that intro that has a little bit of Dante's backstory, but this image really shows Morgana and her relation to Dante and how she's impacted Dante's sort of life or afterlife. So this is what that image is all about. And on the right hand side, you sort of see like these Roman ruins. I'll sort of try to make this a little bit bigger. There's these Roman ruins that are on the right hand side, and those are the remains of Limbo. And you can see Charon right there on the ferry, holding out his hand to beckon Dante and his guide Virgil to step aboard and enter the first circle of hell. So it's been quite an awesome ride to sort of see this get developed. And you've sent me many sketches, inkings, and then you sent the painting. You know, your technique. What are you using most of the time when you're doing these paintings?
Well, everything starts with a pencil and a sheet of blank paper. It's that simple. But obviously, as I've said, I read through your story, and you know, certain things that I'll highlight in the script, and has been interesting to me visually. And then what I'll do is I'll design all the elements separately. So each one of the elements within that picture we're looking at generally would have started on a small piece of A4 paper, and I'll do a sketch and I'll design them sort of in isolation. So what I end up with is maybe a dozen separate images, designs, and then I'll play around with it in the computer and try and come up with a composition that I find interesting and dynamic using those elements. So as you see it here with Dante on the right hand side, and yeah, we've got the little house on the left there with the green flames coming out. And all set with inside the golden cauldron, which, you know, is something that's mentioned early on in the story. And it's just a question I play around with those individual elements and try and, you know, find the best way to kind of put them together to make one whole image, which kind of tells a story in a way, is a little bit of a narrative going on, but above all has a bit of mystery so that people are intrigued and want to know more. I always put in little details as well after the fact. Like if you look in the green water at the bottom there, it's Morgana's reflection, but it's actually her as a child she's seeing.
Right.
She's seeing herself when she was younger. So that was something I thought would be, you know, just a nice, interesting little touch to add to that particular piece. I think that was the last thing that I added to that one. But this first picture was really important because it kind of set out the methodology that I was going to use for all the other paintings that came after. So this one was really, I thought, okay, I've got to get this one right. And if I can establish a kind of a methodology and a kind of look that all these paintings will feel kind of like part of the same whole, they'll all be dramatically different from one another, but the way I approached them is kind of the same. So that when you look at them all together, once they were all finished, that they would have even more impact. So that's what I'm hoping, that one day people will be able to view these pictures in their entirety all at the same time to get the kind of overall effect.
Yeah, and I noticed that's in some of this. Do you airbrush on some of these?
Sometimes.
As well? Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. Most, I would say, probably 94% of the image you're seeing is all done with a brush and paint out of a tube. Some of it's done with ink. Some with like paint washes, very thin paint used over the top, and also sometimes, a little bit of airbrush for certain effects. Airbrush is really good for creating certain kinds of effects and mood and atmosphere and lighting. Yeah,
you get some sort of like glow effects and stuff like that using an airbrush, right?
Right in the middle of that picture there, you can see the cross that she's wearing around her neck. It's got a bit of a glow to it. It's kind of like illuminated. That's a little bit of airbrushing right there.
Right. And what kind of medium are we using here? Is this acrylic?
Yeah, it's primarily acrylics. Like I say, maybe a little bit of ink now and again. I do everything in pencil first. Once I've finalised the layout, I do the whole thing big on a one-size board, which is, you know, quite large. And that's all done in pencil. And then that's inked in with black pens and markers. And then it's just all about paint, really. You get the paint on there and off you go.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about this jarring character on the left, the headless man over here. Who are we looking at? This is someone who's
her father.
That's right, exactly. Now, Morgana's father plays a very, very significant role here. He is the person who really sort of screwed up everything for her. And what we're seeing is actually the father in the afterlife portrayed with the stabbing of her teddy bear, which was the teddy bear that Morgana's sister gave her to protect her. And it's sort of a representation of her love. The father was filled of hate. And so this is this whole entire dynamic that we see is prevalent through other sort of paintings here in the Inferno, and we're going to see a whole lot more of them as we move on forward. So, you know, but man, if you could say that painting is, you know, questionable or provocative, I think that would be putting it mildly. It is very, 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 very sort of demented. But that was sort of one thing that I really wanted to bring out of this story, because the story is very dark. And it's got a lot of elements that are almost akin to something like Hellraiser or games like Doom, and some of the style that you sort of paint here kind of reminds me of those, right? Like looking at evil or you know, the devil here in the picture, he definitely looks like something out of Hellraiser. And you know, some of the other paintings, you can absolutely see some of that influence of games like Wolfenstein or Doom, and I love all of those games. And part of the reason for, you know, me wanting to ever get into something like Homerik was because of my background in loving video games so much. I used to play them so much as a kid. So it's a true treasure to sort of see this vision come to life in a way where, yes, like that is what I was envisioning, but even more so than that, because one of the things that I love about Homerik is my ability to let it go in a way where I hand it off to somebody who brings it to life in a unique way that's of their own volition. And I wanted to commend that, because you have a history, right, with graphic novels. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that influence sort of came into being here? Because there's definitely, like, if someone were to see this on the front cover of something, they'd be like, oh, is this a graphic novel?
Absolutely. Well, my background's primarily working in comic books. And so obviously a lot of people who are interested in that and are familiar with it will probably see some of those influences right away in the work that you've shown them. And obviously computer games as well played a big part, and movies too. I've grown up just loving movies, fantasy films, science fiction and horror, all those genre films I just love. And so all that comes out in the work as well. And it's, again, sometimes it's maybe on a subconscious level and not so much that I'm thinking about. It's just, it's all kind of in there in the background. Everything that I've been interested in.
It's literally in your background too.
Yeah. I mean, I was really lucky because we were encouraged to draw and paint. I have two brothers and they're both very creative as well. My father used to work in a print factory where they did whiskey labels, would you believe?
Wow.
And they would have these huge rolls of like paper that would, 6 to 9 feet long. And on one side would be gold foil for the label for the whiskey. The other side would just be white and be left blank. And they'd have lots of offcuts at the end of the day that they were just throwing the skip out the back. My dad used to bring these back. This is when we were really little. And so there was always huge amounts of paper just lying around our house that we could scribble and draw and have fun with. There was no shortage of paper. So it was a kind of a cheap way for my parents to keep us all occupied. Give us some black paper and a few crayons and we were away. And it all started there, really. And so, as I say, comic books have played a major part in my life. I've worked for 2000 AD on a number of stories and working on characters like Judge Dredd and Sinister Dexter, and a few years ago I actually did a graphic novel that I wrote myself as well as doing all the artwork. That was Jack Boot and Iron Heel, which was a story set in World War II, and the main character in that was an English guy in the RAF, but obviously I was drawing a lot of German soldiers wearing helmets and stormtroopers and SS officers and castles that were very creepy looking, sort of like Colditz, that kind of thing. That I've always liked that subgenre of horror that's kind of like horror stroke World War II. So movies like The Keep, and also the novels that these movies are generally based on. I've read all those as well. And so when you came to me and explained to me that you were going to try and adapt Dante's Inferno with a modern take and a modern spin on it, and the main character's this guy wearing one of those German helmets that I was so familiar with, it was so up my street. It was perfect for me. It was just a real moment where I thought, yeah, this is a really good opportunity for me to sort of do all the kind of things in paintings that I really love to draw.
Oh yeah,
I like doing demons and monsters, and you talked about the Doom games, computer games, and Wolfenstein, and I played all those myself. So I think we were just on the same page, and I knew that right from day one that this was just going to be like a dream project for me.
Fantastic.
In terms of the content, what I was being asked to do, and just the freedom that you were giving me to express myself with it, was just amazing.
Well,
and I'm very grateful.
That is amazing. And at that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back on our next video talking about the next half of David's creative process. So stay tuned for another episode of Homerik, and we will continue this conversation.